Hey guys, today's January 13th. That means that we're reading John chapter 11. John chapter 11 is all about a man named Lazarus. Now, it sets up at the very beginning with us kind of learning who Lazarus is. This is Mary and Martha's brother. Apparently, they were friends, they were really close. We really don't know how close, but we know that it was probably one of Jesus's closest friends that was outside of the disciples. And so this kind of rings true of a story. And basically, Lazarus becomes sick, and he becomes sick. He dies. But before he dies, Mary and Martha send word to Jesus, hey, come heal our brother. Come and see him. Can you help us out? And Jesus decides to stay and do ministry for a few days and arrives 4 days after Lazarus dies. Now, this is really important because to the Jewish faith, they believe that after the third day, the soul left the body. So on the third day, when the sun rose, that the soul left the body and went to its eternal resting place. So for them, when he arrives 4 days afterwards, this is a huge issue. To them, nothing else could be done. Not really that they would ever expect Jesus to raise Lazarus from the dead like he did. But now, even if they were to think that, it would be impossible. If Jesus showed up a day late, they probably still wouldn't think that Jesus is going to raise somebody from the dead. It's not something that happened all the time, but it might have been a possibility. But it was completely out of the realm now that it's been 4 days. And so Jesus gets there, and of course, Mary and Martha, they're in tears. They're not necessarily blaming Jesus, but they're almost questioning Jesus. But they understand their brother is now dead, and so they take him to the tomb. And so not only do they go to the tomb, the funeral party, everybody that was there at the house is now followed. Now there's a big crowd at the tomb, and Jesus speaks the words that says, I am the resurrection and the life. This idea of a resurrection. Now, these are very familiar words to most Christians today because we always talk about Jesus' resurrection. But until this point, resurrection is not a word that would have been said very often. People just didn't come back from the dead. And so when he says this, it's very questionable. Even his followers, even Mary and Martha, understood that in the later date, that the dead was going to rise when Jesus comes back. All at the end, Jesus was going to raise the dead. Everybody was going to heaven. But Jesus was talking about something else, something that they've never even thought of or heard of. And the point of that was that they were talking about right then, right there, the physical raising of Lazarus. And so he calls out to Lazarus, and he comes out. Lazarus is risen on the fourth day. And so he walks out, and you can imagine everybody's celebrating, everything's going on. Oh my goodness, everybody's amazed. They've never seen this before. They've never heard of this. But as the celebration starts, and you can imagine they went back home to Mary and Martha and probably had one of the biggest parties going on. But some people that were there left there not to go to the party, but left to go to Jerusalem and tell the leaders what's been going on. And this is literally the straw that broke the camel's back. This is where they get all their chief high priests together, they get all the Jewish leaders together, and they come together and say, this is it. This Jesus man is getting too big for his britches. He's been healing people, he's doing this, but now he's bringing dead people back to life. Oh my goodness, we've got to do something. And so what happens is Caiaphas works them up into like this craze that says basically, if we don't do something, the Romans are going to hear about this, and they're going to come in with their big Roman army, and they're going to destroy us. They're going to destroy the temples because they want completely rid of everybody that has to do with this. And so at that point in chapter 11, they've decided that they have to kill Jesus. They have to. Basically, Caiaphas says it's better for one man to die than for everybody to die. So Jesus is going to die for the greater of everybody else. And so they've kind of discovered this idea that Jesus is going to die. And so basically, it's now almost springtime. It's Passover time, which is around Easter for us. And so we're getting really close to the very end of Jesus's life. I mean, we're just now within weeks of Jesus's death in the book of John. And so basically, during the Passover time, every Jewish man had to go to Jerusalem. Now, most of them took their kids and their families, and everybody would go to Jerusalem to the temple to do their yearly sacrifice. And so, as they're going, and as now Jesus has all these followers, you can imagine everybody's kind of saying, hey, is Jesus going to come to Jerusalem? Because at this point, you can imagine wanted posters all around Jerusalem, Jesus' face on it. They wanted him. Not only do they want to talk to him, they wanted him dead. And so you can imagine, a little John Bon Jovi in the background, wanted dead or alive. This is the big scene. And so is Jesus going to come? I don't know. Is Jesus going to come? I don't know what it is. But in chapter 11, one of the greatest things I think that we have to take away from this is to put it to our lives today is there was an old gospel song that said, even though Jesus is 4 days late, he's always on time. And a lot of times in our life, we feel like Jesus is late. We've asked and we've prayed and we wanted, and we don't feel like Jesus has shown up for what we've done. But even though Jesus was 4 days late, he was perfectly on time, and he did the unthinkable and rose Lazarus. So don't get discouraged. Stay faithful, stay true to life, because God is always on time. God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow.